Burn them. Burned them all. You think God burned? Right. That's, yeah. Why did he just kill? God right now?
Right. They talked about the Madagascar plan during World War II. Huh.
25 minutes. It's like a 20-minute program in French.
What you could say. And rabbis.
I apologize to you. Why I too, and my own conscience. I watched this marvelous program yesterday at noon. filling your campus with brush.
Yes, but apologize. Get it on the.
Incredible program. It's not always.
Hello, everyone. Morning. Really? Hello, everyone. Good morning. To the people online who are unhappy, all I said was good morning. So you haven't missed anything at all. All I said was good morning. Okay. And so, yes, today we're going to do Germany. And what I what I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we all have a fairly good understanding of what happened in Germany after 1930. Kristallnacht. I mean, we've learned about that in many times. So my plan for Germany was to go up to the ascent of Hitler. If you want me to go through how Hitler ascends and what happens after that, I'll be happy to do that, but it's entirely up to you. By a show of hands, does anybody want me to continue when we get to the rise of Hitler, or do you want me to stop there? Yes. You want to you would like to learn about that as well? Okay. Okay. One more time. Please raise your hand if you want me to continue after we get to Hitler. Okay, then we will. Very good. I just didn't want to, if it's, sometimes, you know, we get to the place and it's like, okay, we've heard about this a million times. I don't want to hear any more. But I'll be happy to talk about that because it's so very important to understand how that happened and what took place. Okay, so Germany then will be in two parts. We'll go today up to the rise of Hitler, and then next week we will talk about Hitler's rise in World War II. There's a lot to talk about there. As you said, it's an entire course almost all by itself. Okay, so Jews of Germany. So as we know, Germany, which is basically North Central Europe, Northern Central Europe, are pretty close. The first Jews who come to Germany apparently come in the year 321 CE. 321 CE, and they are coming from Italy. And there had already been a large presence of Jews in Italy, in Rome. Why? Why were Jews in Rome? Okay, in the year 70, the diaspora. Okay, for those of you who are online, I'm repeating all of the questions. So when somebody asks a question, please don't be upset. I will repeat the question before we have the answer, and I do that every week, so don't worry. I will repeat the question and the answer. So the answer was, following the destruction of the Second Temple, we begin a diaspora. But they were taken as slaves also. Both answers are correct. We actually, yes, question. Okay, so the question is that there were Jews already in Italy prior to 70 CE. And the question is, were the Jews who were treated there before 70 CE treated the same as the Jews who were there after 70 CE? Okay, let me back up just slightly. How did the Jews get there in the first place? So let's think about this. When we have King Solomon's temple, and Solomon is reigning, Jews are living where? Israel, present-day Israel, right? We have our land, we're living in our land. Okay, following the destruction of Solomon's temple, the first temple, what happens? Exile to Babylonia. We have exile to Babylonia, and in addition, some Jews are moving out of the area. They are dispersing to various countries. Yes, Cecil. Very good. Very good. Very good. So Cecil points out that even before the destruction of Solomon's temple, there was trade going on, and the Jews were involved in trade going to various countries. That is absolutely the case. So there were Jews outside the land of Israel before the destruction of the temple, of the first temple. But the greater leaving of Jews, the greater diaspora of Jews, doesn't happen till later. Okay, so we are, after the destruction of Solomon's temple, we have Jews in exile in Babylonia. Everybody who was anybody was in exile in Babylonia. And remember, we've talked about this before, but it is worth it's worth repeating. It bears repeating, it's worth repeating. Okay, gosh. So the Jews were the intelligentsia, the important folks in the kingdom of Judah were taken into exile into Babylonia. And that left who? That left the common people. And Nebuchadnezzar's plan, if you recall, is that they're going to intermarry with the indigenous Canaanites there, and pretty soon Judaism is going to disappear. It's just going to go away because there's nobody there enforcing it anymore. All of the remnants of the monarchy, all the remnants of the priests, everybody who is anybody is in Babylon under the watchful eye of the king. And we know that, in fact, happened. How do we know it happened? Because in 539, when Ezra brings the Torah back to Judah, and the exiles, some of the exiles come back, what does Ezra find? Ezra finds that everyone has been intermarrying. And so what does he tell the Israelite men? Get rid of your foreign wives. This is a very famous proclamation from Ezra. He comes back and he says, whoa, what is going on here? What have you people been doing? Get rid of your foreign wives. From all the accounts, the men gave him the middle finger. And they said, we're not getting rid of our foreign wives. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. But that was Ezra's call. So, in fact, the intermarriage was taking place. And then we know the struggles later on to try to get back to Torah Judaism. And we don't get there until King Josiah. So the same plan, as you well know, is echoed by Nicholas I in Russia in the early 1900s. What does Nicholas I do? He conscripts all the young Jewish males until they're 25 years old. And he indoctrinates them in Eastern Orthodox Russian Christianity. And so by the time they're 25, if they come home, they know nothing about being Jewish. They know nothing about being a Jew. And so if you take all the boys away, sooner or later all you have left are women. And the women are going to intermarry because there's nobody, that's all they can do. And then Judaism goes away. So this plan has been tried a number of times. Yes, Zisel. Very good. So Zisel says the young boys who had been taken away, they turned 25 because they had been indoctrinated. When they tried to return home, they couldn't adapt. They knew nothing about that culture. They knew nothing about anything. So they had a very difficult time integrating into Jewish society. Were those boys halakhically Jewish? Yes, they were. They were halakhically. And remember, it's the rabbis who determine once you get into the tribe, once you're born into the tribe or convert into the tribe, you can't get out. You are a lifetime member of the tribe. That has changed a little bit in very modern times. There are some rabbis, including myself, who believe that if you convert to another faith, maybe you technically don't lose your halachic status as a Jew, but I think it prevents you from some of the things that Jews can do, as, for instance, coming to the Torah for an aliyah. Can't be done for someone who's not Jewish. It just can't, because they say a prayer. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torah. That's not true for anybody who's not Jewish. So you can't go up and say a vain prayer to God. So, all right. Back to the question. Yes, back to the question. I was just going there. What happened to the Jews? So there are Jews who have left the land already. Then they return. Second temple is rebuilt. Then we come up to the destruction of the second temple. The Jews who left and were in exile were in Babylonia. Jews who went to Italy at that time found conditions that weren't terribly anti-Semitic. because those ideas hadn't really been promulgated to a great degree yet. However, once the Roman Empire takes over, and there are Jews, many Jews in Italy, and as you correctly pointed out, after the destruction of the Second Temple, many Jews are taken into slavery in Rome, and other Jews leave. There's a huge diaspora after the destruction of the Second Temple. And so there are Jews all over the world. So there are Jews in Rome who are slaves, and there are also other Jews who are living there. Roman law was okay to Jews. They had some civil liberties. They couldn't spread their culture. They couldn't keep non-Jewish slaves, and they couldn't hold government office. So remember, once again, slavery is absolutely condoned by the Bible. It's okay to own slaves, which is why there were many Southern Jews during the Civil War who owned slaves. That's not against our Bible at all. And in fact, if you had a Jewish slave, often it was because that slave owed you a lot of money and they couldn't pay you. So they became basically an indentured servant and worked off the amount that they owed you as your slave/indentured servant. Indentured servants are different from slaves. Yes, that's true. However, the Bible, you guys are reading my mind. However, the Bible uses basically the same word. So, in the minds of our ancestors, being an indentured servant was equal to being a slave. So, in the Bible, if you have a slave and you have a child, is the child a slave? Yes. Yes. Okay. So the Jews move up from Italy, and and we have the first settlement in Germany in 321, and they go basically to Cologne in the top left. That's the large Jewish community there in the very, very, very beginning. And what did they do when they were there? They were involved in agriculture, they were involved in trade, they were involved in industry, they were involved in the very beginnings of money lending. Once Charlemagne takes over, Charlemagne reigns from 800 to 814. He employed Jews for diplomatic purposes. There's at least one instance of him employing a Jew as an interpreter to an Islamic caliph. So remember that the Christians forbade other Christians from money lending. Why did they do that? They considered it usury, but why couldn't another Christian do it? Not because it's usury. Usury means excessive taxation. It was because our Bible, what they call the Old Testament, says a Jew may not charge interest from another Jew. Christians saw themselves as the new Israel. They
Just to let you know, we're going to have a fire drill at 10:45, and my comment was, why today? So anyways, just so that you don't get, frightened about the alarm going off. And usually we go out in the parking lot, we're there about 5 minutes, and we come back in. So I just wanted to tell you that. We just found out ourselves. That's all.
Okay, it's inconvenient, but we all understand that it's for our benefit to protect us in case something really happens. We know what to do. So we'll all take a deep breath and we'll do it and understand that it's for our best. Okay, so Christians, and Janice, you are absolutely correct. It was considered usury, excessive taxation. Christians saw themselves as the new Israel. Therefore, Christians took on the ethical commandments that are placed in our Bible. Right? So, thou shalt not murder. Christians follow that. Right? Jesus followed it. Thou shalt not steal. Christians follow that. You shall observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Christians don't follow that because that's a ritual commandment, not an ethical commandment. Okay, so because Christians saw themselves as the new Israel, they said that we need to follow the ethical principles of the Old Testament, which they consider part of their Bible. Certainly the Gospels are the most important part. The New Testament, according to them. As I've said many times, I don't think Jews should use those terms, Old and New Testament. For us, there's no New Testament, new agreement. Our agreement was our agreement. It still stands. Moses made it on Mount Sinai. That's it. So for us, it's just the Hebrew Bible, not the Old Testament. But you'll hear it all over the place. Okay. So then Jews, as a matter of course, during the Middle Ages, as we well know, little by little were boxed out from a number of professions, so that money lending became their only means. Now, it's ridiculous to say that every Jew was a moneylender. Some Jews had the means to be lending money. Others were just peasants. They didn't have the means to lend money. But some Jews did, and they were very useful to the local nobles. Why? Because the local nobles needed them to collect taxes from the peasants. Remember, we're talking about a feudal society, so we have the nobility and we have the peasants. We don't have a middle class. And the Jews were the ones who would go around and collect money from the peasants and give it to the nobility. So in that sense, the nobles needed the Jews. They really needed them to do the work for them. However, the people didn't like them at all. I don't know anybody who loves the IRS, right? So the people hated the Jews. The nobles loved the Jews because they got the work done for them. And so the Jews were right in the middle in a really difficult situation. Yes, Cecil. Absolutely. Yep. Correct. Cecil says that particular situation shifted the hatred from the landlords. In other words, the people didn't hate the landlord who was charging them rent. They hated the Jews who were enforcing the landlord's decrees. That's absolutely correct. So Jews were sought after highly by the nobles because they needed money. And they were also very much avoided and considered untrustworthy by the regular population. The earliest communities of Jews that we have in Germany, the earliest flourishing communities, are, as Gary pointed out, along the Rhine River, right here. Mainz, Worms, and Speyer. These are the three big, and Mainz is really big. That's the largest of them. So Charlemagne, as we have our review again very quickly, 800 Charlemagne was, who was Charlemagne? He was, okay. He was the Holy Roman Emperor. And tell me again, I know we spent a little bit of time on this, but it goes away very quickly for all of us. What was the Holy Roman Empire? France and part of Europe, okay. How did it get to be the Holy Roman Empire? Intermarriage. I'm looking more for geography. What happened? Cecil. Good. Okay, so Cecil has this all pretty close. Cecil says the Roman Empire split, with the eastern half being ultimately taken over by the Ottomans, and the western half staying as the remnant of the Roman Empire. That is correct. Before the Ottomans, though, we have the Byzantines. But you are absolutely correct. So you have the Roman Empire, which is huge. It covers all kinds of territory. Constantine, when does Constantine live? When? 300, good. I just want to keep just putting in dates. So if you hear 300 CE, oh, Constantine. Okay, I get that. Okay, so what happens when Constantine dies is that let me backtrack. During his reign, Constantine basically divides the empire, the Roman Empire, into two. The western half of Constantine's empire has a capital in Rome, and people are speaking Latin. The eastern half, Constantine establishes a new capital in Turkey called Constantinople, which is now what city? Istanbul. Very good. So, Constantine creates a new capital called Constantinople in what is now Turkey. Those people in the eastern half of the Roman Empire are speaking what? Greek. Very good. Why are they speaking Greek? That was the language of that part of the world. Why? Alexander the Great. Very good. So before it was the Roman Empire, what was it? It was Alexander the Great's empire, right? So Greek was everywhere. Greek was the national, was the lingua franca, as we say, the spoken language everywhere. That's because Alexander the Great marched through. And then the Romans defeat the Greeks, right? And then we have a new era. However, the people in the eastern part of what had been the Roman Empire are still speaking Greek. By this time, the people in the western part, are speaking Latin. Okay. So that's how it gets to become the Holy Roman Empire, because once the empire splits, especially after the Great Schism. Tell me what the Great Schism is. Yes, Cecil. Very good. Very good. That's exactly correct, Cecil. So Cecil says that after the Great Schism is a disagreement between the Eastern and Western practices of Christianity. Remember, I told you it revolves primarily around a theological principle about from whom does the Son proceedeth? From Okay, and so once the empire splits in two, the eastern half, the one in Turkey that's speaking Greek, is called the Byzantine Empire. The one in the western half that's speaking Latin, that has Rome, is now the Holy Roman Empire. It's the remnant of what had been the Roman Empire. Melinda. Good question. So, hang on, I will repeat it. Melinda asked, what was the actual dividing line between the two? And I have forgotten. I'll have to go look that up. But it's a good question. Thank you. So this is how the Holy Roman Empire becomes the Holy Roman Empire. You think the dividing line was on the west of Poland down to the Balkans? Because, okay, that could be, because some of them write in Cyrillic and some write in Latin, so that could have been the dividing line. I'll have to, it's something I should know, so I will look that up. So, good. All right. By the 10th, after Charlemagne dies, successive rulers to Charlemagne gradually start enforcing church law, canonical law. And by the 10th century means what years? 900s, very good. Holy Week for Christians, which is Palm Sunday to Easter, that's their Holy Week, started to see more and more anti-Semitic behavior, anti-Semitic announcements, anti-Semitic actions. So the question is, was that because of the Stations of the Cross and how Jesus was treated, carrying the crucifix? Less so because of the Stations of the Cross, because who are we told, who were along the route? His followers, right? Good. And the Romans were the ones who were beating him. His followers were called what? What group? Nazarenes. Very good. The Nazarenes. Remember, they were, I'm trying to connect all the dots every time we do something. Nazarenes were another group during the Second Temple period. You had the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Zealots, the Essenes. Those are the four that Josephus tells us exist. And then I would add to that, there was another fringe group of how a Jew could express his Judaism or her Judaism. Okay, the dividing line of the Holy Roman Empire. What do we got here? Yeah, but that doesn't give me the countries. Let me see here. Okay. Poland. Poland was the dividing line, and Poland was the dividing line. Everything west of Poland, up until basically France became the Holy Roman Empire, everything east of Poland and the Ottoman, and ultimately the Ottoman Empire started out as the Byzantine Empire. Thank you. Poland, Melinda. That's the dividing line. Okay. And so I think the anti-Semitic behavior during Holy Week comes about more because Jews were accused of having killed Jesus. And it's called deicide, D-E-I-C-I-D-E, the killing of God. Zisel. Where do the Huns? Yes, so Zisel says, where do the Huns and the Mongols come in? Do you remember what year that happens? So, the Mongols invade around 1200. So we're not quite up there, we're not quite up to it yet in what we're talking about. Yeah, yes, and like Genghis Khan and that whole situation right in there. Yes, absolutely. Yes, Attila the Hun. Yes. Okay, so Holy Week began to see an uptick in anti-Semitic behavior because Jews were accused by Christians of having killed Jesus. And if we look at this intellectually, what happened? Caiaphas, the high priest at the time, told the Romans where Jesus would be. And so he was basically turned over to the Romans. The Romans are the ones who executed him with an assist. Did Caiaphas know that was going to happen? Maybe. I don't know. I think it would be irresponsible to speculate, but it's possible he knew that it was going to happen. The bottom line is the Jews didn't execute Jesus, period. And that was the Christian belief, and it wasn't erased until 1965 with Nostra Aetate. So, and it is still held by some very far-right Christian groups even today. Yes, Cecil. Of course. Of course. So Zisel correctly points out that if the Jews had killed Jesus, it would have been by stoning. Crucifixion was not a Jewish practice. That was a Roman practice that probably predated even the Romans. They learned it from others. And it was a particularly gruesome way to die, to be crucified. So Zisel absolutely correctly points that out. Okay. So we are still now around the 10th century, the early 10th century, meaning the 900s, somewhere in the 900s. Jews could read Hebrew prayers and they could read the Bible. Many other citizens, non-Jewish citizens, were completely illiterate. So Jews had some literacy going on. They didn't have any secular knowledge. They didn't, just like the rest of the population, they didn't know about science, mathematics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they could read the Bible and they could read the Hebrew prayers. Starting around 1000 CE, 1000 CE. So what's going on in 1000 CE? Crusades, good. The Crusades are gonna be, it's 1100, but 1000 is, yes, that's what you should be thinking. Oh, this is getting close to the Crusades. Yes, that's but 1000 was a jubilee, and some people thought it would be the end of the world. Interesting. Okay, good, good. around 1000 BC is when Talmud study starts in Germany in a big way with a man named Rav Gershon ben Judah. And Rav Gershon ben Judah was called at the time the Light of the Exile. He had a school in Mainz, and it was the largest Jewish school at the time. It was for Talmud study. And projecting forward, by the mid-14th century, there were over 6,000 students in this school. There's going to be a whole lot of tragedy that happens before the 14th century, but by the 14th century, there were a whole lot of students in that school. Okay, so now we are up to the First Crusade in 1096, basically 1100. Anybody know who orders the First Crusade? Pope Urban II. Why does Pope Urban II order the First Crusade? What is the First Crusade about? They want to what? Say that again, Zisel. To rescue Jesus' tomb from the infidels. Okay, essentially correct. Basically, it was to get Jerusalem back for Christianity. In 1100, who was ruling Jerusalem? Good, Islam, right? Islam was in charge. Jerusalem had already been conquered by Muslim invaders. And so Pope Urban II ordered, he ordered a crusade to take place to get Jerusalem back for Christianity. Obviously, you have the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you have the Dome of the Rock, and we have the remains of the temple. So all three religions claim Jerusalem as very important, which is why it's such a mess. But more than that, there's another kind of, I don't want to say shady, but there's another reason behind the schism happened. And so what happens when the schism happens? You have Christianity in the West, and now you have people sort of not sure about the authority of the Pope, right? So you have...
By the time this is over, you I ought to say goodbye to everybody.
There's no fire, we're just practicing, no fire.
We'll see you tonight. But that's only in comparison.
What it does, incorporates the name. That's all that. I'm almost done. I have like.
Oh, you're here still.
Yes.
Yeah, that's called dedication. But I want to just say this in the program yesterday. That one Jews whenever nobles, sex, they hated nobles and the Jews. It wasn't just the Jews. They hated nobles for, huh?
Yes. Okay, so we have, before we start the next class, we have sort of a little special celebration. By the way, I forgot to tell you, I have some, before we do the celebration, I have a little bit of good news, and that is really good news for me. I'm going to be leaving June 3rd through June 8th to Chicago. I have to take the last class that I need for my doctorate, and then I can take the comprehensive exam and write the dissertation. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm almost there. Dr. Rabbi Cantor, Rabbi Dr. I don't know. I guess I don't know what goes first. Okay, so my understanding is we have two very special birthday people today. Very special birthday people. So we have to sing happy birthday, of course, to Rita and Warren. Yes, Warren, you. So, yes. And Israel, wonderful, great. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rita and Warren and Israel. Happy birthday to you. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Happy birthday! Yes. And I will see you all next week. We'll continue Germany. Have a wonderful, beautiful week, everyone. I'll see you next week. Enjoy your next class.
Nobody blows out candles, just like. Oh, well, we can
What we do in my house that we will not do, Rita and Warren, is we sing skip around the room, skip around the room. We won't shut up till you skip around the room. Put another candle on your birthday cake. Okay, everybody else can come up and scoop it up.
I want to check. I would appreciate to get a piece that's 1/3 of that.
1/3 of this?
Yes.
This is small.
You know what? Looks beautiful, but
This is called a piece, called a sliv.
that's good. Thank you very
Put your,
much.
put your, there it is. There, so it's have a sliv. Not a good server.
Thank you. Don't have it wide enough. Thank you very much. Wide enough. Now, thank you.
Wait. Whoa. This.
I'd rather have
Didn't promise that in rabbinical school. Okay, everybody's on their own. Okay, so sorry, it's not pretty.
sorry that we had a mistake. I'm sure. You know what? We Calabasas, daughter-in-law, had to leave night for Dallas. So okay, Monday night, Wednesday, come back. I have pity for my son with 2 young kids, works full time. So we brought in and Rosie spent an hour and a half with the older one. Get brownie points about, huh? Most important thing is my son was able to relax while he's covered.
All right, folks. All right, everybody. We're going to grab our text and get ready to go. I always ask you, got your boots on? Got your pick shovel? Got your merchandise for your store? Here it is, we get ready to go. Microphone. Good morning, everybody near and far. It's nice to be together with you. I do want to make one comment, which is last night was Erev Yom HaShoah, so today is Yom HaShoah, the day of commemoration of the Holocaust. And it's my father, who was a rabbi, as many of you know already, and also was a survivor, said it's very important to commemorate these things and very important to make sure that people learn about it and know about it. However, what's most important is perpetuating Jewish life and Jewish learning and Jewish joy. And so even though today is Yom HaShoah, one of the wonderful things that's happening is that all of us are here together learning. You just spent a wonderful hour before this, and now we're together. So the best thing to do, the best thing to do is to commemorate Yom HaShoah by saying Am Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live, but that means not just Israel, but all of people Israel. So I'm glad that we're here together today. Yes? So thank you. Your grandson is in Poland with the March of the Living. As you know, Rabbi Schuldenfrei is there with an adult group, and if you were at the commemoration here last night, you saw his video. Hard to see from live streaming, but saw his video. And the kids who are there, I once led a delegation for the March of the Living, and it is very difficult, very, very moving. But one of the things that's really wonderful about it is that so many teenagers from all over the world go and they get together, and they care deeply about it. So that's probably why you've seen pictures of kids, teenagers, on the tracks into Auschwitz with their Israeli flag around their shoulders and singing and affirming, and it's wonderful that he's there. So with that in mind, we are going to head back to the Gold Rush. I have to admit that I have zero remembrance of what page we stopped at, but I do think I know. And didn't you get them? They're all around you. So I take a look at reading G. Also, did you say the blessing for learning before you started the first class? All right, so let's join together on that. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotah v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. May our learning today be meaningful, and may we dedicate it to teens like your grandson who affirm their Jewishness, and to the memory of those who would love to be with us studying today. So I think we did G. Can anybody look at it? And I don't know, there's no page. It just says reading G, because this was originally on a PowerPoint. Why don't we do this one, and then we'll move on? Is there somebody who's willing to read reading G today? Thank you. Hold on, I gotta bring you, if we're gonna have people come up. The pages go from, I don't know why, but the pages go the Hebrew way from right to left. At the top of every page, it will say Jews in the Gold Rush, and it will say reading A, reading B, reading C, reading D. We are on reading G. Is that helpful? Yes. Okay, good.
Jews in the Gold Rush. Anti-Semitism was openly expressed. During the summer and fall of 1849, Jewish peddlers frequently came into the foothills with merchandise to sell to the Americans and the Indians. Their goods were usually strapped across their backs, while the necessary provisions were carried on mules. These peddlers, like most of their countrymen, were expert tradesmen. Reaching a settlement, they would pitch their camp and immediately set out a tempting display of their wares, consisting, as a rule, of gaudy colored shirts, socks, cheap jewelry, and similar articles. Oh, okay.
Sorry? I'll get the other mic in a minute. What do we see in the beginning of this text? Is there anything that anybody would need to be upset about? They're clearly not considered Americans. Okay. Oh, like most of their countrymen, because even though we know that some of the people who settled first in this area, in California, were born in the United States and came from other places. A lot of us came from outside the country, but only in this first paragraph, because this is written, this is a quotation. As I told you, most of these things were written in books or in newspapers. So is there anything wrong with what the Jewish peddlers were doing up until this point in the story?
Weren't a lot of the peddlers foreign born because they were coming from Europe and they were being couldn't find a place to stay because of the laws, so they became peddlers across the United States.
Right. So they're peddlers, but I'm asking you a question that has nothing to do with them being foreign, or nothing to do with with whatever difficulties they had finding a place to live. What I want to know is there anything wrong with being a peddler? Let's say you're working up in a gold rush country that doesn't have a town next to it. How would you feel about the peddler coming? You'd be happy. You'd be happy because nobody's out there. It's not like they can go to a CVS or a Macy's or something. There's nothing there. So the people who were writing these articles didn't take into account at all that nobody else except for Jewish peddlers were going up into these, not God-forsaken because they were trying to mine there, but you know what I mean, completely undeveloped places. So now go on with what they're going to say.
A blue or red shirt would sell for at least half an ounce of gold dust, and the Jewish trader would invariably get the better part of the bargain, as the settlers had no means of weighing their gold. The peddler would put the desired article of purchase in one side of his scale and insist upon the buyers pouring sufficient gold dust into the other side to balance the goods. But while the Americans were invariably cheated.
Oh, we did this
Yeah.
one, but go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like that sentence. We're invariably cheated, which I don't agree with anyway. In all these transactions, it was the poor, ignorant Indians who suffered the worst in their dealings with these rascally traffickers. Doubtless, my readers can readily understand how so many of these same Jews afterward became wealthy and prominent merchants in various California towns.
Okay, so we read that, but that's okay
Yes.
that we go backwards a little bit. Thank you for reading. 1 second. This was written by the same guy that we talked about before. We talked about William Perkins, virile anti-Semite who would write into newspapers all the time complaining about Jews. And why was the underlining reason that he was complaining? He was not getting the money. He had stores. Remember? So, but let me ask you this question. If, we just went through with COVID and there was a whole bunch of, there were numerous problems in transporting goods across the world. I don't know why it's still going on except for recession, but we had a big problem. So what happens when goods are not, they're not plentiful and people need them? The prices go up. So here we have this person talking about these horrible Jewish peddlers who cheat people by charging too much money. And however, where else would the people get these things? And we already learned that before people could even go out into the mines or do anything, what did they have to buy? They had to buy tons of supplies, including a mule, saddles, bags, all the goods they needed to bring, which weren't so easy to get, as we've already found out. So I'm not trying to say there were not any Jewish peddlers who took advantage of the situation. Humans are humans. However, to write an article and say all Jews are terrible because it's expensive up there in those places is a slam that's ridiculous, in my opinion. Anybody else wants to say something? I
Okay.
know that
There's one additional problem with the peddlers that schlepped up to these mountains is that the amount of time that they spent where they're not getting paid for anything while they're schlepping, so that cost they have to come make enough money to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, thank you. And we already did a reading about somebody who got beaten up along the way, right? So I can't pull this mic. Yeah, I feel like a host in a TV show or something.
I don't know about the veracity of this description, but I feel very angry, I guess, in a way, about the description here that the peddler would put the desired article of purchase on one side of his scale and insist upon the buyers pouring sufficient gold dust into the other side to balance the goods. That's outrageous. This statement is outrageous because it accuses the Jews of She accuses the Jews of cheating. And in the Torah, it says about the veracity of scales. And this is so much against Jewish ethics.
There are other aspects about it. The guy who wrote this article, was he up there? Was he up there in those small mining towns? He was not. So one of the things that's absolutely true about the articles that he wrote, that were completely anti-Jewish, is that he had no firsthand information about any of those things. Did you still have something you wanted to say, or shall we hold on to it?
Quick thing. I was just listening to a Czech podcast about anti-Semitism, and it was very pro-Jewish, but the lady who was talking said that she thinks, her personal opinion, why everybody hates Jews because, or hate in the history, because they were rich.
Okay, so now I'm gonna go to the next one because we've got to press on. Now we're going to hear about a half and half situation. I'm going to read this one. Please be with me on reading H. Amongst our population of that golden day, we had one Jew, one out in the area. The old miners will ever remember Dutch or Deutsch John. When I arrived in the diggings, old friends hailed from every side, and an invitation was soon given to all hands to go down to Dutch John's and take a big drink. His stock of goods, 2 boxes of crackers, a half a box of tobacco, and 2 barrels of the youngest whiskey I had ever tasted. The counter was the head of an empty barrel. Scales and weights were not much then in use, and John had none. A drink was paid for by taking a pinch of gold dust with his thumb and forefinger from the miner's bag, or sorting out a lump the size and value of $1, according to Jewish ideas of such things. Before taking the pinch from the bag, John's finger and thumb could be seen sliding down his throat for the purpose of covering them with saliva to make the gold stick, and then he thrust it into a miner's pile. This mode of settling was looked upon rather as a source of fun for the miners than an imposition. So, we have a few things here that could make us feel like the person who's writing it doesn't really understand why the miners really want to go to his place, to Dutch John's place. Why do you think that the miners really enjoyed going to Dutch John's place? I'll repeat it. Say what you're saying. It was like a show to them. What entertainment did they have? So they all got together and went to Dutch John's because they knew it was going to be a kick, right? Anybody else have anything to say? Okay, so one of the things, what's the only thing that we can really find in this friend's writing of his experience down with those people is the anti-Semitic part of that. Yes, Zisel? Right. Yes. According to Jewish ideas of such things. So we're going to move through a little bit and not comment on everything, but go ahead and I'll repeat your comment. Ah, so you don't see it as an anti-Semitic statement. You see it as them writing Jewish ideas of these things that are like biblical about weighing things. Okay, we can have different ideas about it. I don't know the guy who wrote it. He's long gone. So we can't really determine that. Yes, he explains how much he takes. Okay, hopefully Dutch John was trying to be fair, but it turned out to be a fun evening. Now, if you decide to go to Vegas, you know completely well that most of the time you're going to lose your money. But you go to Vegas because it's fun. Whoever does that, it's fun. And so this was their fun. And obviously this person really tried to make it a kick for all of them. So I gave you a picture on the next page of California gold miners. Where is he? Okay, in a bar. And this gives you an idea of how it would be, except for even more rough in the bar that was just described. So if you were out there in the middle of nowhere and you wanted to go out for a night on the town, even if the liquor was bad, would you go to Dutch John's? His show, social gathering. Okay. So here is a response by a merchant family's son, a descendant. I think it was a grandson, actually. Does somebody want to? Let's see. I'm going to give this to you, Gary. Can you please read? Reading I. This is a response.
A descendant of a merchant family wrote in his memoirs, "I have never seen it in print, but the Jewish merchant had lots in the opening of this coast. Every town, village, city had retail or wholesalers, carried large stocks, gave liberal credit. It was observed where there was no Jews, gamblers, fast sports, there was no businesses."
So this is a positive description by a person who was a family member of a merchant family. Do we know that it's a Jewish person? We don't. We have no idea from this text. However, it's very interesting what he says. If there were no Jews there would not be a community there. But it's linked to other things. These were things that gave people in these mining areas sustenance. It could be sustenance of food or sustenance of clothes, but also it could be sustenance of camaraderie, of joy, of just all the things that these guys wanted. They were tough guys, or else they wouldn't be out there. So we're linked with gamblers and sports, but he lists it as a good thing. So, anybody have a comment about that? Yes. Yes, ma'am, I'm bringing the mic to you.
I wasn't in the gold rush. I wasn't even in California. I was in Western New York. And what started the city where I lived, the Jewish people who had a fabric store, an electric store, shoe store, every kind of store you want to think of. There were Jewish people there. We lived there for a while. The Jewish people left because either they died or they left someplace and their children wanted to go someplace else. But this is what got the city started, was Jewish people who had been peddlers and started stores because they did what you read about in your history books. They found a place to drop their wagons and start a store.
Thank you. That's absolutely the case. And you recall that when we started out with the history of this class, before we got into the gold rush area, we were talking about the fact that this is why we're here having this, because we helped found this state. It would not have happened without us. So now I wanted to add something that was about the relationships between established places like San Francisco and all the way up in these little mining towns. So this next text comes from Harriet Lane Levy, who lived at 920 O'Farrell Street in San Francisco. There's actually a book about her. So when we get to the end of the class and if you decide you want to keep these texts, you can find a really great and interesting book about this woman. It is called 920 O'Farrell Street. So I'm going to give this, do you want to read? We are on reading J.
I knew that there were old maids. A cousin was fast becoming one. I heard my mother reproach her on her 21st birthday, but that did not mean that a girl would not eventually marry. It meant only that she would have to go to the country to live, to the interior. The interior was the market for all marriageable material that could not be advantageously disposed of in the city. Shopkeepers came to the city from the interior, from towns of the San Joaquin, I'm not from California, or Sacramento valleys, or from the mining towns Grass Valley, Calaveras, or Macalum Hill to buy goods. Their quest often included a sentimental hope confided to a downtown wholesale merchant. If a man's appearance was agreeable and his credit good, he would be invited to the merchant's home to dine and meet the unmarried daughters.
I thought you'd enjoy this one. So here's the thing. We just celebrated Pesach, right? So you've got all of these guys up there in the mining towns, but a goodly number of them, most of them, were still people who would either have founded a little Jewish community, as we talked about while we were doing in this class, or if they couldn't do so because they were really alone, when it was major holidays, they would make their way down to a place that did have a Jewish community. So many of them would take that time to stop their peddling or to stop their small businesses, and they would go down to San Francisco. One of the things that they would do is exactly what was described. If they were single and they were tired of being single up there, they would go to try and feel out who had daughters that were of marriageable age that nobody had claimed yet. So this is a very, very, very good example. Oh, we're having phone day, aren't we? This was a very, very good example of what needed to happen in Jewish communities when everything was really spread out. But one of the things that comes up in this text, and I don't know if you see it, they would dress themselves as well as they could, because most of the time, they were up there in these dusty places without even wood-planked streets. So they would dress themselves as well as they could. They would putz themselves, you say in Yiddish. They would want to get all gussied up for it and come down to San Francisco, and they would try to find out from somebody in a store who was looking for a match for their daughters, and they would get themselves invited, as this says. There are a lot of things that are written about Pesach during that time, because that was a really important time. And then you would see a lot of marriages. You're not supposed to get married when you're counting the Omer until Lag BaOmer. And people still held by those things. You would see people go to the city during Pesach, meet the girl of the family, decide they were going to get married, and when Lag BaOmer came or Shavuot came, weddings. tons of weddings listed in the city ledgers. So that it's a sweet story, right? Anybody have any comments about this? Yes. When they got married, unless the father in the family had a business where they could say to this person, I want you to come to San Francisco to work in my business now that you're my son-in-law, which many people did. What the families would generally do is that they would scope out, because it says here at the bottom, if the man's appearance was agreeable, but not only that, if their credit was good, right? It means that the father would check out whether this guy was a success or whether he was a schlump. If he was a success, then what the father would do would be to help fund this guy in whatever area he was to expand his business, to be able to grow it from something that's peddling, for example, into a brick and mortar store. And that's how the family would expand its holdings that way. Any other comments? It's a good plan. The Rothschilds did that all over the world. And when my father and mother escaped to China, there were Jewish families, Sephardic Jewish families, that were doing business all over the Near East, everywhere, from India all the way through China and Japan and all of these places, and they were all family members. So that was a really good Jewish way of being able to expand your holdings. So I also wanted to give you an idea of what Jews were able to do in these gold rush areas. So turn the page so you can see the home of two people in Nevada City, Aaron and Rosalie Wolf Baruch. They lived in Nevada City. Before there was a gold rush, Nevada City was But then, because of the gold rush, it started to grow and expand, and more people started coming there, and it actually turned into a real place, a real town. So now you can see that people who lived there, this house was built in 1852. When did the gold rush start? 49. So you already have a sense that these people got there, they started to help build the town, and look at the house. A really nice house. So a number of people were able to do that. So now we can also turn the page where you'll see, I'm sorry it's a little blurry, but this is an example of a gold rush ketubah. Yeah, you've got it now. A gold rush ketubah. And you can see, what's the date on it? The 22nd of May, 1860. So now, folks, what did I just tell you about Pesach and Shavuot? Pesach comes to middle or to the end of April, and then we go through all of April and May, and we get to the 50th day, which is probably what this right after Shavuot, and you've got a ketubah. I just thought it'd be fun to take a look at it. So what is it without, nice pictures to enhance what we're doing? We're now on Reading K, and I wanted you to take a look at two different kinds of retail ads, one from Simon Rosenthal and Brother, and one from A. Klauber and Company. So thank you. Thank you. You can see that one of them is in Nevada City, and we learned about Nevada City just now. It was a real town. And the other one is in Volcano. Anybody ever heard of Volcano? And that's because it really doesn't exist anymore. It was a gold rush town.
The largest stock ever brought to Nevada City, just received by the last Nicaragua steamer, the Uncle Sam, direct from Paris, the largest and most desirable assortment of French goods ever brought north of Sacramento. Ladies, remember that we shall receive monthly by steamer new stocks of goods directly from Paris, which we promise to sell cheaper than can be bought this side of San Francisco. A. Klauber and Company ad in Volcano Weekly Ledger, October 27, 1855. Groceries, provisions, liquors, crockery, glassware, hardware, mining tools, clothing, boots, shoes, domestic dry goods. Goods purchased at our store will be delivered free of charge at any of the mining camps in this vicinity.
Just like Amazon. Yeah. Just like Amazon. Okay, what's the difference? What's the difference in these? This is all tangly now. There we go. What's the difference in these two ads? I chose them both for a reason. One is luxury items geared for the women who might be wives of the store owners or people who are just doing well in the gold mines, right? So, and the second one is things that are needed. Thank you. Did you want to say something? Okay. Anybody else? So that's true. We're taking a look, and I did deliberately, taking a look at something that happened in Nevada City with regard to the ad. First of all, where are these luxury goods coming from? Paris. They really are. Do you remember what we took a look at earlier in the class? When we talked about boats coming in from other places, we talked about two different things. What?
Still exists. Volcano County.
Oh, good. Thank you for looking it up. Population 45.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I knew when I said it doesn't exist that somebody was going to find it. I'm glad you did. A very big population. Yeah. So, okay, wait a second. So let's take a step back. I really appreciate that. Let's take a step back, though. Do you remember what Jewish merchants used to do when ships were coming in from out of the country? What they did, as you may recall when I said it, is that if they had a lot of seichel, if they were smart, they took a boat out before the boat came into dock. They took a boat out. Anybody could have done this to the boat, and they would get first dibs on some of the things that were in the boat. That's number one. So companies did end up getting a lot of goods that came from Europe and out of the country. What is the second reason that Jewish companies got a lot of European goods? They had family in Europe, and that helped them. It's very interesting to me, honestly, because we aren't the only people who were immigrants. You know, we talk about immigration from Ireland, immigration from Germany of people who were not Jews, immigration from all over the place. But somehow the force of the Jewish family was linked in a very important kind of way. So that's what we have. And the delivered free of goods at any of the mining camps in the vicinity was a really good selling thing because the guys didn't want to leave their claims. So if the store would bring it to them, yay. Okay. Let's take a look at one more ad in reading number L. I'm going to do this one. L. Oppenheimer of One Door North of Riffle Saloon. Sonora newspaper ad. Really? I mean, it's amazing. Take a look at some of those ads there. One door north of Riffle Saloon. Why? Everybody would know where the saloon was. So there you go. Calls the attention of the public to his well-assorted stock of the finest Havana cigars and best brands of Virginia smoking and chewing tobacco. Also to his genuine meerschaum pipes and other qualities too numerous to mention. Why all of the misspellings? What? They didn't have dictionaries? People in the 1800s weren't concerned with spelling like we are? Wait, one second. Not English, not their first language. Is that what you both wanted to say? Okay, English, not their first language. Could be any of those things, but it didn't matter because the guy's reading it going, whoa, cigars, you know, chewing tobacco. I've got all of these things. Wait, I want to finish the ad. Also to his unsurpassed stock of fruits and candies. Now what do we get to? Perfumes, toys, and Yankee notions, and also all kinds of oils, paints, glassware, lucine fluid, and lamps, fluid to burn lamps, and chimneys, Collins patent sunburners, genuine Italian violin and guitar strings, always on hand, and then limes, lemons, and oranges, fresh every week. Now, in Hebrew, you would call this a kolbo, which means everything in it. But that's how these stores had to be. Is there anything in particular in that second part of the ad that strikes you? The citrus, we'll talk about that in a minute, and that's what you were going to say, the citrus fruits. The violin strings. Okay, so let's just, yes? Your father was a pipe smoker? And what? He prized the meerschaum pipes. They're very popular. You know, they were the ones that had carving on them, sometimes made out of ivory, big bowls. Yeah. So what I want to find out here, why limes, lemons, and oranges? I mean, now let's think about this. We live in Southern California. If you're going to talk about crops in Southern California, what would it be? Citrus. We've got lots of citrus. But when you're up in the mountains where the climate isn't the same and it's very rocky, because that's what they're looking for, right? Load in rock, it's not so easy to grow those trees. So why do they need the citrus? Vitamin C. We all know about people getting scurvy on ships. So these people had a lot more access to vitamin D because they were in the sun all the time, but they were missing certain things. So when the citrus fruit came, that was a big deal for them. Stoves around them. They're very easy to. They get ruined in cold weather. So yes. Ah. Okay. What the British soldiers are often called limeys. And that is because they had scurvy without citrus fruits, and then when they got them, they started to feel healthier. So now we see about the citrus fruits. Why the violin and guitar strings? Exactly. They probably brought them, depending on where they came from. Did you have something else? Yes, the violins, if the person was from Europe, very often they'd be carrying a violin. So they didn't have to supply the violins or the guitars. They supplied the ways to keep them going. And of course, you're absolutely right. What we are seeing here is not only things they needed to live, but things that they needed to live as humans with some kind of entertainment. What I want to know about, folks, are the perfumes and the toys. So what if we are explorers of ads to find out what is going on in Sonora, which is still a town, a community, and grew by leaps and bounds, what do we find out about this particular ad and time about what's happening in Sonora? Wait 1 second, please. They're getting married and having children. So now you would not have seen that in an earlier ad. You would not see that in Volcano. But you're seeing it in the places that got developed as cities. Are you all okay? I hope so. Okay. Now we get to the bad. What time is it? Sorry. Okay. We have a few minutes. Yeah? Okay. Now this is the dun 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 dun. So let's see. Somebody read this. Reading M. Let me get somebody who's close enough. Come on up. Come on down. Do you want door number 1? Door number
5. Okay, Jews in the gold rush. When the business fails, bankruptcy attached. We are sorry to learn that the store of Henry and Moses Hirschman was attached yesterday by the sheriff and closed up. The Messrs. Hirschman suffered heavily in the fire of a year ago, July 19th, 1856, a loss of $15,000, losing all their property, which was considerable, and leaving a debt in San Francisco, every dollar of which they have discharged like honest and honorable gentlemen as they are. Foul play has been the cause of their present troubles, the attachment being for goods barely received from San Francisco.
Okay. So what was the newspaper this was in? The Nevada City Journal in 1857. So down there I wrote, who's the editor's sympathy with? Thank you very much. The store owner. And now I wanted you to see that while we've seen some anti-Semitism, there's something else happening here, right? Because how do they describe these brothers? Honest, honorable people who, even though they're going bankrupt, saw to all of their debts, and then they had troubles that were kind of underhanded in getting new goods from somewhere. And so that's what happened. But the editor clearly has sympathy with the store owner and not the person who was demanding payment, and it seems like they were indicated in a dishonest way. Okay? So let's talk about fires for a minute. People could be doing very, very, very well. They could be established in a town, but everything was wood. Everything was wood. And fires happened all the time, which is why in some of the things we learned when we were doing history at the beginning, we learned that a lot of Jews joined volunteer fire departments in their community. When we were talking about business bureaus, and we were talking about different kinds of organizations that people joined, Jews were very prevalent in joining the fire service in each of these towns. And they didn't have LAFD. I used to be a rabbinic chaplain for San Jose Fire for 17 years, and it's a very brave job that they do. I even have a uniform. It's a very brave job that they do, and it's moment to moment, but the people who dealt with this in these towns, what did they have? They might have had a tank of water. They certainly didn't even, there's no plumbing. They were using wells. There's no street plumbing in those places. They had to do bucket brigades. They cared about what was happening to their community, so they did it. So this is unfortunate for Henry and Moses Hirschman. I tried to look up who they were to see if they ever got back on their feet and what happened to them, but I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything written. And we're going to do one more text of a sad, sad thing in reading number N, and then we'll stop for the week. I hope you found this interesting today. I'll read this one. Suicide by hanging. Letter from Selig Ritzwoller in 1869. Dear God, pardon and forgive me, my poor wife and poor children. Pardon and forgive me, my heart is broken. The Hebrew Benevolence Society in San Francisco take pity on my poor wife and children. Do not let them starve. To my kind brothers-in-law Rosner, I owe a great deal of money. Dear God, into their hands I commend my soul. Amen. Joel Levy and Kaufman, take care of my wife and children. Sonora Union Democrat, March 20th, 1869. So for some people, you know, we've learned a lot about success and the traveling around and the building of things, but for some people it didn't turn out that way. And for people who had come from another country, in this case Germany, that Selig Ritzwoller came from, who tried to raise a family in the area, it was too much for him. And he did something that is, that, as I think we all know, is against Jewish law, which is taking his own life. But we needed to take a look and to see that not all of this was growth of community and quest for Jewish acceptance and building and all the stores that we learned about in all the cities across the country that Jews founded, but things like this as well. So I'm sorry to end on a sad note. I hope that his children and his wife were taken care of. I'm sure that they were. And we'll be together next week. Take care. And yeah, we're going to collect those folks. We're going to collect them. I keep them in my office. Great. Do I have all of these now? A lot of widows and a lot of I don't have the box, but
We got something. AirPod. Don't cost a that. But this is the next test. So let's put it on. Okay. Not that much, but it was good. Do you want to move it? Great. You're welcome. Okay, okay. All right, okay, bye. Okay, feel better. Yeah. Don't worry about you. Bye. I got the, I'm gonna share it next week. I was given this to tell people. I'm interested in this history. No, it's BC publication. Janice.
They sell it like at Barnes and
I don't know.
because I see all kinds of.
Yeah, it says display until January 25th, 2023. So I guess they probably have it at Barnes and Noble. Pre-reveal.